the calm before the storm. The Drav'korr Empire had never lost a war. For thousands of years, their fleets had swept across the galaxy, burning worlds, enslaving the conquered, and laughing at the weakness of so-called civilizations. To them, peace was stagnation. Expansion was survival. The galaxy belonged to those strong enough to take it, and by every measure, the Drav'korr were the strongest, at least until they discovered Earth. From their perspective, humanity was a pathetic young species. Their homeworld sat isolated on the outer rim, brimming with untapped resources but woefully unprepared for interstellar war. Orbital scans revealed no planetary shield networks, no planetary fleet of dreadnoughts, and no armies numbering in the billions. Compared to the militarized behemoths of the core worlds, Earth looked soft, almost laughably so. The Galactic Council had warned against action. Their records on humanity were sealed, heavily restricted, and marked with a peculiar phrase: engagement prohibited, threat level undefined. The Drav'korr, arrogant as ever, dismissed it as political posturing. They saw an undefended planet and believed the Council was hiding something. Resources, perhaps, or a secret alliance. General Drav'korr, commander of the 3rd Imperial Armada, was eager to prove otherwise. He stood at the bridge of his flagship, the Tyranny's Rex, a hulking warship bristling with plasma cannons and ion lances. Around him, an entire fleet gathered, over 1,000 warships, with troop carriers carrying nearly 2 million soldiers. "Open the channels," Drav'korr growled, his scaled face twisting into what passed for a smile. A dozen alien races across the galaxy tuned into the broadcast as the Drav'korr announced their intentions. It was not a declaration of war. It was a proclamation of conquest. Humans, Drav'korr's voice thundered across the stars, translated into every known tongue. You stand at the edge of history. Today, the Drav'korr Empire claims your world. Submit, and your species will serve as laborers in our glorious expansion. Resist, and you'll be erased. The fleet roared approval. Plasma engines burned blue as the Armada surged toward Earth, eager for slaughter. But on the planet below, there was no panic. Cities continued their daily rhythm. People commuted to work, children went to school, markets buzzed with trade. News channels spoke of the alien fleet in orbit, but there were no riots, no mass evacuations. It was as though humanity had seen this day coming for far longer than the invaders could imagine. In an underground command bunker beneath Colorado, General Marcus Kane watched the alien broadcasts with unreadable calm. A man in his 50s, battle-worn but sharp-eyed, Kane had seen more conflict than most of his peers combined. His uniform bore no excessive medals, just a single insignia, the sigil of Earth Defense Command. Around him, officers and analysts reported on alien fleet movements. Holograms flickered, marking thousands of ships descending into low orbit. "Sir," one officer said, her voice steady but taut, "they're positioning for orbital bombardment. Standard Drav'korr doctrine, shock and awe. Civilian population centers will be targeted first." Kane's jaw tightened. He knew what the aliens expected: screams, fire, and terror. That was the Drav'korr way. Crush morale first, mop up survivors later. "Are the shields calibrated?" he asked quietly. "Online and stable, sir. All cities are covered." Kane gave a single nod. "Good. Let them make the first move." Above Earth, the alien fleet spread out into formation. Vast capital ships aligned their plasma cannons, their targeting systems locked onto New York, Beijing, Moscow, and dozens of other urban centers. General Drav'korr's voice echoed across his command deck. Fire. The night sky lit up as burning spears of plasma rained down. Entire continents should have been scarred, oceans boiled, skylines vaporized. But instead, nothing happened. The blasts broke against invisible barriers, dissipating into harmless waves of heat. The cities below remained untouched, their skylines glowing peacefully under the night. The shield's vast, energy-dampening fields woven across Earth's surface had activated flawlessly. On the Tyranny's Rex, silence filled the bridge. Alien officers blinked in disbelief, their claws tapping frantically against consoles. General, the bombardment failed. One of them stammered. Voro snarled. Impossible. Their world is primitive. They shouldn't. Shall we fire again, sir? Of course we'll fire again. Increase output. More plasma rained down, a storm of destruction that would have gutted a dozen core worlds. Yet Earth remained unbroken, the shields absorbing every strike as though the Drav'korr were hurling pebbles at a fortress wall. On the ground, Kin allowed himself the faintest smile. The enemy had arrived exactly as predicted. When the first alien dropships cut through the atmosphere, humanity's response was still restrained. Civilian life continued with eerie calm. Soldiers in exosuits waited in hidden bunkers, their weapons sealed and silent. Orbital defense platforms remained cloaked, their kinetic launchers primed but unfired. Kane turned to his staff. Let them think we're weak, he said softly. Let them commit everything to this invasion. When the time comes, they'll learn what humanity really is. Far above, the Drav'korr roared in confidence, convinced their prey was cornered. They had no idea that in a matter of seconds, everything they believed about war, power, and fear would be rewritten. Fire meets steel. The first Drav'korr dropships split the sky like iron rain. Their hulls glowed red as they tore through the atmosphere, scattering clouds in their wake. Inside, alien soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, snarling with anticipation. The prey had dared to resist orbital fire, but no planetary defense could withstand the fury of the Empire's ground forces. The Drav'korr infantry were towering beasts, armored in plates of scaled alloy and wielding plasma rifles capable of melting through starship hulls. They had conquered 100 worlds. To them, this was routine slaughter. The first wave descended outside New York. Dropships slammed into the streets, disgorging squads of alien warriors who fanned out with practiced precision. Civilians looked on from a distance, calm, eerily unafraid. Some even filmed the invaders with handheld devices. The Drav'korr commander barked an order. Plasma fire lanced outward, burning holes through vehicles and walls, but civilians ducked into shelters without screaming. No stampede, no chaos, just quiet resolve. Then the humans struck. From alleyways, rooftops, and subway tunnels, soldiers in matte black exosuits emerged. Sleek helmets masked their faces, their movements amplified by servos and neural links. Their weapons were not plasma nor energy blades. They were old-fashioned, kinetic rifles, rail-propelled slugs, and hypersonic caseless rounds. The first volley shredded the alien vanguard. Plasma armor meant to resist thermal blasts crumpled under the sheer brute force of tungsten penetrators moving at 7 times the speed of sound. Limbs snapped, armor split, blood sprayed. Drav'korr soldiers reeled in shock. What weapons are these? One roared, clutching a shattered chest plate. The answer was simple, though no alien could understand it yet. Physics. Human weapons didn't rely on fancy energy manipulation or shield bypassing tricks. They used mass and velocity, concepts so ancient and brutal that no defense calibrated for plasma could withstand them. Shields tuned to disperse energy beams were useless against a lump of metal moving faster than sound. More aliens fell, each impact sounding like a thunderclap as bullets smashed through their bodies. The Drav'korr tried to regroup, unleashing a wall of plasma fire. Human soldiers dove into cover, but when they rose again, it was with drones at their flanks. Small, darting machines swarmed the battlefield, their underslung cannons spitting streams of molten tungsten. They moved faster than the eye could follow, targeting weak points with surgical precision. Entire alien squads were erased in seconds. Above, the fleet commander Voro watched the live feeds with mounting horror. They're not supposed to fight like this, he snarled. Their weapons, primitive ballistics, they should be obsolete. An officer hesitated. General, they've adapted. Our armor, our shields, they were designed for energy warfare. Not this. Voro slammed a clawed fist onto his console, then crushed them with numbers. Deploy every division. Drown them in fire. And so the aliens poured out by the tens of thousands. Dropships landed across every continent, blackening skies with their numbers. Whole cities became battlefields. Yet everywhere, the story was the same. In Paris, alien squads were ambushed in narrow streets, their plasma rifles useless against human guerrillas firing hypersonic rounds from rooftops. In Cairo, drone swarms intercepted dropships before they touched ground, punching through their hulls mid-descent. In Tokyo, entire waves of aliens were annihilated by hidden railgun batteries that fired tungsten slugs the size of cars, each shot ripping through multiple dropships in a single strike. The Drav'korr fought with ferocity, but the more they pressed, the clearer the truth became. Humanity wasn't simply resisting. They were dismantling the invasion with cold, surgical efficiency. Inside Earth Defense Command, General Kane watched the global feeds without triumph, only grim focus. "Status of enemy casualties?" he asked. "Severe, sir," an analyst reported. Estimated 40% of ground forces neutralized in the first 4 hours. Fleet losses at 15%. They're committing reinforcements faster than they can regroup. Kane's eyes narrowed. They still believe they can overwhelm us. Good. Let them dig deeper. Above the planet, the orbital battle had begun in earnest. Drav'korr warships unleashed volleys of plasma and ion fire, but human stealth craft were already among them. Small, agile ships that hadn't even been detected until they struck, they danced between capital ships like wolves among cattle. Their weapons were not grand energy lances, but rail cannons firing dense rods of tungsten and depleted uranium. Each impact tore through alien hulls like paper, ripping ships apart in silence before crews even knew they were under attack. The aliens had always equated power with spectacle. Blazing weapons, colossal fleets, overwhelming fire. Humanity showed them that true power was efficiency. Hit first, hit hard, and don't miss. The orbital battle shifted in minutes. Alien dreadnoughts exploded one after another. Massive blossoms of fire, visible even from Earth's surface. On the ground, alien morale faltered. Squads broke under relentless gunfire. Commanders screamed for retreats that never came. Because human cyber warfare drones hijacked their communications, sowing confusion. Orders were scrambled, units isolated, dropships redirected to empty coordinates. For the first time in centuries, the Drav'korr knew fear. General Kane leaned over the central display. He could feel the moment the balance tipped, when the unstoppable empire realized it had stepped into a trap it could never escape. "Commence Phase 2, he ordered. Around the globe, hidden silos opened. Orbital rail platforms decloaked. Satellites pivoted into attack vectors. Humanity had waited, endured, and prepared for this day. The counterattack had only just begun. Seconds of eternity. The Drav'korr Empire had always believed themselves unbreakable. Even now, with ships burning in orbit and ground troops falling faster than they could deploy, General Voroth clung to that belief like a lifeline. "Regroup the fleet," he roared from the Tyranny's wrecks. "Form defensive lines. We will crush them with discipline." His bridge crew scrambled, reordering formations. Hundreds of ships shifted into a crescent wall, plasma lances charging to full capacity. The general's voice boomed across the fleet's channels. "The humans rely on tricks. Primitive tricks. We are the Drav'korr. We do not fall to prey animals." His officers howled in affirmation. Pride and fury replaced fear. For a fleeting moment, the alien armada looked like it might rally. And then the sky fell. In orbit above Earth, long-dormant satellites came to life. They had no energy signatures, no plasma cores, no ion trails. To alien sensors, they were nothing but dead rocks until they moved. Guidance systems aligned. Targets locked. The command code pulsed from Earth Defense Command. Execute Phase 2. From orbit, steel thunder fell. The weapons were called Rods of God. Tungsten cylinders, each the size of a bus, dropped from orbital velocity. No plasma, no explosions, just raw kinetic energy, physics weaponized into divine judgment. The first rod struck an alien cruiser. For a fraction of a second, there was silence. Then the ship split in half, torn apart by the sheer force of impact. No shields could stop it. No armor could resist it. The cruiser became a fireball, its remains scattering into space. The second rod fell into the heart of the crescent formation, plowing through 3 capital ships in a straight line before detonating their reactors. The blast illuminated the void like a second sun, and then dozens more followed. General Vorotich's command deck shook violently. His claws dug into the railing as alarm screamed. "Report," he bellowed. "Impacts across the fleet. Kinetic strikes. They're killing us in seconds." On his displays, ships winked out of existence faster than status updates could track them. Destroyers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, all erased in moments, shredded by invisible blows. The pride of the Empire was being dismantled with terrifying efficiency. Vorotich stared in disbelief. These are not weapons of war. They're execution devices. On the ground, humanity watched the sky burn. Civilians in New York pointed to the streaks of fire ripping across the heavens. Children gasped. Soldiers in bunkers cheered as alien warships were obliterated one after another. Inside Earth Defense Command, General Kane stood at the center of the operations floor, hands folded behind his back. His voice was calm, almost detached. "Status: enemy fleet losses at 60%, an analyst reported. Projected 90 within the next 5 minutes. Kane nodded. "Maintain fire pattern. No survivors unless they retreat." There was no triumph in his tone, no exhilaration. Only the cold execution of a plan long prepared. Humanity had not built these weapons for conquest. They had built them for survival for this exact day. In orbit, the Drav'korr fought desperately, but their weapons meant nothing. Plasma lances carved the void, but their targets, deadly, simple rods of tungsten, were immune. They could not be intercepted, could not be jammed, could not be stopped. Every second was a death sentence. 1, 2, 5 ships gone. Entire formations wiped out in streaks of fire. Alien soldiers screamed over open comms, begging for orders that never came. Captains tried to retreat, but their engines were destroyed before they could align. Panic spread like wildfire. Then came the cyber warfare strike. Human AI programs, hidden in the background of galactic networks for decades, activated. Alien comms flickered and died. Ships received false orders, some firing on allies, others flying straight into impact zones. The fleet's cohesion shattered. For the Drav'korr, seconds stretched into eternity. In the span of 10 minutes, the mighty Third Imperial Armada was reduced to burning wreckage. General Vorotich stood in silence on the bridge of his failing flagship. The Tyranny's wrecks shuddered under repeated impacts, alarms howling. He could see Earth below, unscarred, serene, as if mocking him. "Al," he whispered, "how can a young race do this?" His officers stared at him, desperate for guidance, but Vorotich had none. He was witnessing the end of certainty, the collapse of an empire's pride. When the next rod fell, the flagship split apart. The last thing Vorotich saw was the glint of blue oceans on the planet that had defied him. Silence fell across orbit. The once mighty fleet was gone. Only debris and burning husks remained. Humanity had destroyed a galactic superpower in seconds. In Earth Defense Command, Kane finally exhaled. His staff exchanged glances, some smiling, others simply staring at the displays in disbelief. "Sir," an officer said softly, "the invasion fleet has been neutralized." Kane's expression remained cold. "Not neutralized," he corrected. "Executed." His eyes shifted to the stars, to the countless other empires surely watching this unfold. "They'll come to understand," he said quietly. "Humanity didn't want war. But if war comes to our door, the galaxy will learn we don't fight for minutes. We don't fight for days. We end it in seconds." The aftermath and the warning. Orbit was quiet. Where 1,000 ships once blotted the skies, now only wreckage drifted, twisted hulls, burning fragments, and frozen bodies suspended in silence. The Third Imperial Armada of the Drav'korr Empire, feared across half the galaxy, had ceased to exist. Not in weeks, not in days. In seconds. On Earth below, life went on. Cities were untouched, their skylines gleaming in the sun. Children played in parks. Markets bustled. Traffic lights blinked green and red as if nothing had happened. Humanity had faced the storm and emerged without a scar. In the Colorado command bunker, General Marcus Kane stood before a wall of hollow feats. They showed every front. New York secured, Paris cleared, Cairo calm, Tokyo untouched. Alien ground troops had been wiped out almost as soon as they landed. Survivors were being rounded up, trembling and broken. Report, Kane ordered. Enemy fleet destroyed, an officer said. Ground forces eliminated or captured. Civilian casualties, minimal. Minimal. Against an empire that had annihilated countless civilizations, humanity's loss was measured in the hundreds, not millions. Kane nodded slowly. The weight of victory pressed down on him, not with relief, but with certainty. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. In orbit, a handful of Drav'korr vessels remained intact, crippled, engines dead, their crews too terrified to fight. They had been spared deliberately, humanity's calculated mercy allowing them to survive for one purpose. They were herded into stable orbits by human drones, their weapons stripped, their comms disabled. Once, these soldiers had laughed at humanity. Now, they sat in silence, staring at the planet below, as if at a predator that had toyed with them before the kill. General Kane's voice reached them through open channels. "You came here seeking conquest," he said, his tone low and even. "You came here believing we were weak. You came here believing you were inevitable. But now you know the truth." The surviving aliens listened, their eyes wide, their claws trembling against dead consoles. Humanity does not seek war. We never did. But we are patient. We prepare. We endure. And if you bring war to our home, we will not simply defeat you. We will erase you. The words hung in the silence of space, carried across the galaxy as the message was broadcast on every intercepted channel. In the Galactic Council chambers, entire delegations froze as the human broadcast cut through encrypted frequencies. They watched the wreckage of the Drav'korr fleet spin helplessly in orbit. They heard the human general's voice, calm and merciless. Some counselors shivered. Others whispered in alarm. The Drav'korr had been arrogant, yes, but they had also been powerful. If humanity could annihilate their fleet in seconds, what else were they capable of? One counselor, a reptilian diplomat from the Salker Combine, muttered the thought that many others dared not voice. They are not prey. They are predators who chose patience. And now the galaxy must live with what they've become. Back on Earth, alien prisoners sat in reinforced compounds, surrounded not by cruelty, but by silence. Human soldiers did not beat them, did not torture them. They were fed, given water, treated with medical care. This mercy terrified them more than any brutality could. One Drav'korr officer whispered to another, "Why do they let us live?" The answer came from a human guard who overheard, his voice low but sharp. "So you can spread the message. So you can tell your empire what seconds feel like when humans decide to end a war." The aliens lowered their eyes, broken. Later that night, Kane stood on a balcony overlooking the city lights. For the first time in days, the bunker was quiet. He looked up at the stars. Knowing unseen eyes watched back. His aide approached quietly. "Sir, the council will call for talks. They'll want explanations." Kane didn't turn. "They'll get their explanations. And their warning. Do you think they'll come again?" Kane's jaw tightened. "They'll be afraid. But fear breeds desperation. So yes, one day, someone will try again. When they do," he paused, the city lights gleaming in his eyes, "we'll remind them what seconds mean." And so humanity returned to its quiet rhythm. Factories resumed production. Families rebuilt. Soldiers remained vigilant, their weapons waiting in silence. Earth did not expand, did not boast, did not seek revenge. They simply endured, as they always had. But across the galaxy, the story spread like wildfire. Survivors whispered of rods from the heavens, of railguns that shredded armor, of drones that moved like phantoms. They spoke of cities that did not burn, of a people who did not panic, of a planet that ended them in seconds. To the Drav'korr, humanity had become a nightmare. To the rest of the galaxy, they had become something worse. A question: what happens when patience, resilience, and ruthless efficiency belong to a species that refuses to die? The answer lingered in every corner of the stars. Humans were no longer underestimated. They were feared.